Hello again and welcome to another edition of Newsmaker of the Week. I'm Leon Worden and I'm pleased to welcome this week's Newsmaker, no stranger to SCV TV, but first-time guest on this show, the man behind the Fallen Warriors Monument. Hope I got that right.
You got it right.
Mr. Bill Reynolds. Welcome.
Thank you. Really great to be here, Leon. I feel kind of blessed to be on your show.
Well, you know, normally we like these Newsmaker shows to have a little bit of shelf life, and here we are in October 2017. I wanted to get you in because you've got a big day coming up right around the corner on November 8th. What happens that day?
We're going to have a fabulous ceremony that's been planned out with the folks at City Hall. The Mayor Cameron Smythe, is going to be our MC. We have a Army chaplain, retired Army chaplain, a combat veteran chaplain, who's going to give the invocation. We're going to have the posting of the colors by the Marine Corps League out of Simi Valley. Dante Acosta is going to speak on behalf of the Gold Star parents. And then I'm going to speak to discuss a little bit about the project and to thank all of the community supporters. We've had huge community support on this.
Now tell me what this project is. What are you unveiling?
Well, it's a fabulous granite monument. The front side of the monument features the military logos at the top, and it'll have headings of World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, and the Iraq-Afghan wars. And below that are the names of Santa Clarita residents who perished in war in each of those theaters. So we've got 49 names.
49 casualties that
yep.
we've had. Okay.
Santa Clarita residents who perished. And the backside of the panel features laser-etched artwork of images representing World War I to present. And it's so beautiful. I mean, I was there the day that it was installed. It was the first time I saw it. I've seen lots of pictures and plans.
And that was just this month, right? October, I think?
October 12th, they set it in place.
Okay.
I tell you what, watching that thing be installed made me so emotional. I've been at this for so long.
I bet, yeah.
And to see that going down was it was a really big deal to me. And I tell you, a guy who deserves tremendous credit in this community is Charlie Rasmussen. Vietnam veteran, CB, has donated all of his labor and services to have the site prepared, including the pergola extension, which is happening as we sit here right now.
Yeah, explain that to me. Let's describe for our viewers where this is exactly.
Okay, if you're...
And this is also where the November 8th event is going to happen, right?
Yes.
So where is this?
It's at the Newhall, Veterans Historical Plaza.
That triangle there.
It's that triangle space. Basically, it's at Market in Newhall. It's been there for maybe 15 years. The city created it roughly 15 years ago, yeah. And it's like a shrine. It's beautiful for veterans and for our community. So when the idea of this monument first came up, we decided that's where it has to be. And so it was, I had a place in mind which would have been in the plaza, which would have been more simple to install. It didn't necessarily fit with the city's ideas about what should be done. I'm not sure that I don't think they understood, some folks at City Hall didn't understand what this really was all about. But it was Bob Keller who pretty much came to the rescue and offered up a compromise location. And from that point on, it's been rolling. It's been going great. So the actual location within that plaza, if you're standing what I call the grassy knoll in front of the flags, it would be to your left, and it's pretty darn close to the corner of Market and Newhall.
And folks would know the location because that's where every year on Veterans Day we hold the annual Veterans Day event, which I guess you have something to do with too.
Well, I'm involved in that. I've been on the city's committee, helping recruit people to be part of the ceremony. Total honor to do that. And also the 4th of July parade pretty much starts right from there too. I mean, there's people all over that plaza.
That's where the parade registration area is.
Yeah.
People know it from that. And so actually we're going to have a couple back-to-back events then. You're unveiling on November 8th, and then we'll go right into Veterans Day on the 11th.
Yeah.
So both in the same place.
It was, you know what's great? So I wanted this monument done earlier in the year, and the city wasn't able to get it as quickly as I wanted it. Maybe I was a little bit unreasonable.
I want everything yesterday too.
Yeah, well, that's me. Let's get it done. But finally, Ken Strickland called me up one day, and he says, city manager of Santa Clarita, calls me up and says, "Hey, Bill, why don't we target Veterans Day to do this, to finish it, have the unveiling that day?" And I said, "Oh, Ken, I can't do it. I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. On a tour of the White House and watching President Trump's first Veterans Day speech at the amphitheater at Arlington. That's what my wife wants to do, and I promised that we would do that, so that's where I'm going to go." He says, "Well, we can do it. We can have this ahead of time because you have to be there." I said, "Well, thanks, buddy." So we set it for November the 8th, and I just found out recently. This is just an aside to this whole deal. I just found out recently that evening of the 8th, or either the morning of the 9th, myself and several other Vietnam veterans are going to be flying to Vietnam for Veterans Day, where we're going to meet President Trump.
So you're going to Vietnam on the 9th?
I'll be probably the 9th. I'll be flying out.
And then you'll be at Arlington on the 11th?
Nope, my wife will be.
Oh, okay.
I said to Meg, I'm sorry, I'm ditching you.
That's some quick flights.
I'm ditching you for Vietnam and Trump. Sorry.
Okay.
She said, "Great."
And I want to get to your visits to Vietnam and explore that a little bit in a moment. But
sure.
Walk me through this monument. How did you come up with this idea?
I'm really glad you asked that. Well, go back about 5 years. I'm sitting in my office one day and I'm thinking, I wonder how many local residents we lost in Vietnam. And I came up with a list of 14. It was pretty easy to find. You go to virtualwall.org, you can find the names. So I had those, and I went to City Council, and I encouraged them to put up a granite pedestal with the names engraved on it. Seemed like the right thing to do. And they didn't go for that. They decided they'd put bricks down the walkway to honor these guys. I was a little disappointed with that decision, but that was their decision. So
Well, that's how the plaza was designed. You've got the bricks around there with you've got an area for veterans, then you've got an area for basically everybody else.
Yeah. So
go on.
Yeah. So they had standards, so that's what they wanted to do, and I didn't know anything about their standards. I just going.
There's a guy who wants to get something done. Yeah, I get that.
Bingo. So one day I'm sitting over at the visiting some of my buddies over at the Elks, and the exalted ruler at that time, Ted Olson, and myself and several others were having a couple beers and talking about the fallen from our area.
Yeah.
And one guy says, "Well," Ted says, "I wonder how many we lost in World War II." And I said, I don't know where to go look for that. Another guy says, "Well, you might look at the Signal Archives." So I know a few people over there, Lila and Jason, and so I put a call in, and they said, "Well, come over, we'll talk about it." And Lila says, "Well, we don't just let anybody in our archives because the papers go back to 1919 and they're kind of brittle, but we're going to let you look at them." Yeah, you do know. You should know. So
I've thumbed through them.
So they let me in, and I went through the World War II era and the Korean War era, page by page by page, and I took photographs of every article that indicated a fallen warrior.
Great.
So I had all these photos. I hadn't compiled the list yet, and so as I'm putting the books away, and Lila says, "Well, Bill, now that you've got this information, what are you going to do with it?" And I says, "You know something? We need a granite monument here to honor these guys like cities all over America have. We should have that. We don't have that." And so just like that, she turned to Jim Holt, said, "Jim, talk to Reynolds, get a story in the paper tomorrow." And away we went. It just got legs after that.
So walk me through some of the things that are already done by various groups in the city for veterans. I mean, we've got You've got the Rotary Garden over at over in the middle of town.
Right.
You've got the big wall at Eternal Valley. Talk to me about some of those things and
Okay,
how.
fine. The memorial wall at Eternal Valley is for deceased veterans.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a brother or a dad or a relative that just served the country and died,
Mm-hmm.
you can have his name engraved on the walls. We've got about, I think we have about over 1,200 names on that wall. Okay, so that's one thing.
So that's not specifically for
Fallen.
people who lived here and were killed in a war zone.
Right. Yeah. The Fallen Warriors Bridge has a plaque that is dedicated to the Iraq-Afghan fallen.
And that's on the Cross Valley Connector there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. You're familiar with that.
I'm familiar with that.
And then the Rotary Club has a veterans garden, if you will, up there that has tiles that honor the Iraq, the Iraq-Afghan fallen. And I asked them sometime before this monument thing was happening if they would add the Korean War and the and the Vietnam War and the World War II guys. Well, they were able to add the Vietnam and the Korean War, but they didn't have room for the World War II. So they just said we just can't go that far.
Okay, so this monument that you're installing on, or that you're unveiling on November 8th is unique in that it's the only thing that then honors everybody who we know from who existed, who lived in the Santa Clarita Valley and was killed in an active war zone. I know there are some fallen who were active military who died in one way or another, and were not in an active war zone. Are some of those names on there also, or how's that handled?
No. The exception to our rule that you have to fallen in combat, there are 3 names on that wall. There's one name on there, Stephen Cawley, who served in Iraq, perhaps maybe it was Afghan, one or the other, who came home and he committed suicide.
My memory.
Yeah, you've got it on your website. He came home and 6 months later he committed suicide. The city honored him on the Fallen Warriors Bridge. So his name is on this monument. There's a fellow who...
And I know the Army records, if I'm remembering this correctly, I think the Army investigation determined that basically Army or combat or his service was the proximate cause. The reason behind that.
I didn't investigate it that far. I figured if the city was
that makes
honoring him,
sense.
So if they're going to honor him, then there was a guy who came home, a Marine who came home from Guadalcanal and also took his own life.
Oh, really?
So we decided that his name should be on there. And then, as you know, just recently, Stephen Cawley's brother, Alan Cawley, took his life. And because his brother's on there, just thought it was the right thing to do to have his name on there. Other than that, every one of them were in the war zone when they perished. I have several other names of guys who were killed. A guy was headed overseas, and in back east somewhere he had a car accident and perished. So his name isn't on this wall.
Okay.
So I feel.
Has that been a difficulty in dealing with the families of people who were, excluded and that kind of thing, or has that been a problem, or is everybody understand? Or
it's not been a problem. See, Bob Slocum, Gold Star Dad, is on our committee,
right?
And when Stephen took his life, not Stephen, but Alan, I went to Bob and I says, hey, I need some advice from you. He's the point man for the Gold Star families. He's their like a spokesman. So I went to Bob and said, what do you think about this? And he said, I'll check and I'll get back to you. And it came back, we should add him. I've had other people, and I've had reservations about it myself. I had reservations right from the get-go. I don't like the idea. I worry about the idea of honoring someone who took their own life and not in war. But at the same time, if the war is the cause of it,
right.
It's a difficult thing because you don't want
was
people
that
lining
case
up.
I was talking about.
Yeah.
The Army determined that. So,
very difficult.
I'm not going to ask you to remember or recite 49 names, but talk to me about a couple of people who we're going to see on this wall.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting thing that happened. I was having a little bit of a delay getting the front panel finished because we were exploring the World War I aspect of this, and I was kind of frustrated about it. I wanted to get this thing done so we're ahead of schedule, but as it turned out to be a blessing that we had that stall, because I'm sitting on I'm sitting on a bar stool in Reno, and having some drinks, playing a poker machine. My cell phone rings, and this young woman says, "Hello, I'm looking for Bill Reynolds. I understand he's got a monument, and I want to talk about that." And I said, "Okay, you got the right guy." I said, "What can I do for you?" She says, "Well, I want to know if my uncle's name is going to be on there." And I said, "What's his name?" I didn't have my list with me or anything. Right. She said his name was Henry Acuna, and he was killed in the Korean War. And I said, "I can tell you right now, we don't have his name." I said, "Do you have any documentation?" And she says, "I do." Well, shortly she emailed it to me. I got a hold of the granite supplier, and his name is on there now. So it was just, you know, he was killed. There was another guy from the Korean War who was killed in action. He was a pilot. I wish I can remember his story now. There's so many stories about these guys. There was another, by the way, when the city approved the monument, I had to go through Steve Knight's office to have all of the names vetted. And I thought I had 20 guys from World War II. And it turns out that one of them had been shot down and was a prisoner of war. And they turned him loose at the end of the war. And so it was all in the records. And also in the records was the fact that
It turned out he lived.
He turned out he lived. He survived it. He got shot down and survived it and was captured, turned him loose. 10 years later, was killed in an airplane accident. Jeez. So there's stories like crazy on each one of these guys. You know, you and I both have got bios on, short bios on these guys.
SantaClaritaWarMemorial.com.
So what I'm thinking about, Leon, let me interject this, is that I may go back to City Hall for one more thing on this thing after the first of the year. You can have an audio system set up. You press a button and you can hear someone narrating stories. And I think that might be a useful tool for, learning for kids.
Well, one of the things that we do now when we, put historic photos in a restaurant or something like that is put a little QR code on there so you can, pull it up on your cell phone and read about the person.
Yeah.
And got to get some QR codes on your monument.
Yeah.
Maybe on the back or something, or whatever. Next day,
Yeah.
each person's name, get a little QR code, and you can just put your cell phone over there and you read all about them.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotta do that, man.
Though there's more to do.
Yeah.
I have to tell you though, it's been a long time coming for this to be installed. Well, maybe doesn't seem long to some people, but for me, it's like get her done.
In government time, it was pretty darn quick. I mean, yes, I am familiar with frustrations of dealing with any government. That's the way government works. But this was relatively speaking, this was one of the easier things. Bill.
Once the city got
it might not feel like it, but it was.
It didn't feel like it at all. But once
look at Newhall land, they've been trying to build something for 20 years now.
Yeah, well,
So come on.
I was trying to
20 months maybe.
I'm
right?
not trying to make money. This is just something that needs to happen. Yeah. But once the city embraced this, it's just been such a fabulous collaboration between me representing our committee and several people from City Hall, namely Julia Regan. She was assigned to be the city project manager. She managed to get all the drawings done, permits done, plan check approval, all of that done. But I go to Charlie Rasmussen for the gigantic support that he's provided on this, tremendous at a tremendous cost to his company. So I can't give him too much credit. We had many fine contributions from around the community. I interviewed a guy named John Martin, World War II
veteran. This is in
veteran.
the Signal. You're handling this page in the Signal.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. It's the Veterans page every Friday, full page with photographs. So John Martin's wife called me up, her name is Mary, and said, I've been reading your articles, and I think my husband would have a great story for you. Would you be interested in interviewing him? Mm-hmm. I said, absolutely. You know, anytime a World War II guy pops on my radar, I'm there. So I went to their house, and Mary says, he's in the dining room. I'll get his memorabilia, and I'll join you in a minute. So I go in the dining room, and I realized that right away that John had dementia. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't even sure I was there. Mm-hmm. This is a great American I'm talking about here, navigator on a B-29 bombing Japan. And so Mary comes out, and she proceeds to tell me everything that she knows, mm-hmm. shows me all of his memorabilia. Mm-hmm. I borrow stuff, I scan it, and I write the man's story. I did research on Google, found out that his squadron was nicknamed Empire Busters. and Mary was just so appreciative of the signal and this story being published, mm-hmm. that she became quite a nice donor to our project. You know, it's
well, it touches a lot of people, and you know, that's one of the one of the joys about something like SCV TV. You know, I mean, I've talked to, you know, had the opportunity to interview a lot of people who were old 20 years ago, and now they're gone, but we have their stories.
Yeah, and, exactly. That's the beauty of this. Yeah. And I want to say, for the record, I want to thank you for your support on this monument. I mean, you helped go through the names. Helped me with the boundaries of this valley to determine who should be in and who should be out. So I want to shake your hand on that. It meant a lot.
My pleasure. You know, we're running out of time, and I don't want to let you go. I promised that we were going to come back and talk about your trips to Vietnam. Now, tell me, you were in the Army.
Yep, 9th Infantry Division.
And where were you, when, and how do they receive you now when you go back to Vietnam?
Well, okay, first of all, I served with the 9th Infantry Division when it was reactivated in 1967. It had been deactivated after World War II. Mm-hmm. So we like to call ourselves the originals of the 9th Division. So we trained at Fort Riley, went over on a troop ship. I was there throughout 1967, served in a very unique military fighting force called the Mobile Riverine Force. We lived with the Navy. They took us out on landing craft to do our patrols, so it was a full year in that kind of environment. Mm-hmm. Lost a lot of guys. On a 47 on one day from our battalion. So, you know, the combat was pretty fierce at times. So that was June 19th, 1967, we lost all of those guys. Mm-hmm. I went back in 2007, led a group of 17 people, all on our own dime, to go there to honor those people. We were on that ground.
So it was to honor your own dead.
Yeah, that's basically why we went that first time in 2007. So I noticed right away, and it was a little bit harsh going through. I guess you'd call it customs when we arrived at Tan Son Nhut Airport. Mm-hmm. There were communist soldiers there that didn't seem terribly friendly. They made us pay extra money for our visas and kind of took advantage of us. And then later on, I got to know this guy named Timothy Davis of the Greatest Generations Foundation, who saw my documentary, not my documentary, about my unit, Brothers in War, on Netflix. Mm-hmm. It's on National Geographic playing right these days now. Mm-hmm. He reached out to me and said that he's been taking World War II veterans back to their war zones, and now he wants to take Vietnam veterans back to their war zones in Vietnam. 6 weeks later, after communicating with him, myself and 3 guys who were seen in that documentary, we're back in Vietnam, retracing our footsteps in the Mekong Delta. We went up to Khe Sanh. Okay, so you got through customs and you get out there, and what's going through your mind? I mean, is everything coming back? Or like, well, first was it traumatizing? What? For me, not at all. I was excited to be there. And by the way, I've been back there like 4 to 5 times. And I'm going again for Veterans Day. Well, now, as you go back these 4 or 5 times, are you there to honor those guys specifically, or what are you doing now? Do you have some kind of relationship with Vietnamese people there, or what's the deal? I don't have a relationship with any of the Vietnamese people other than my son's father-in-law who lives there. My son married a Vietnamese boat person. Okay. The relationship I have is just being in the city and out in the villages, in the countryside, and just having such great interactions with the people. When we were there in June of 2007, we met former VC that we fought against on that ground. When we went back in April of 2016, we met 2 other former VC that were on. In fact, I gave one of them my Purple Heart, my miniature Purple Heart. He had been wounded the same day that I got wounded on that ground.
VC?
VC,
Really?
former VC. When we went back in June of this year for the 50th commemoration of that battle, there was we call this guy the one-armed VC. He lost his arm in battle fighting the 9th Division, not on the June 19th, at a later time. He has a memorial there that honors men who were killed on that battlefield on both sides of the war. In his display of memorabilia, he had found some items on my website that he had printed out and put on display in his memorial, which blew our minds.
That's funny. Yeah.
So we had a big ceremony there in June on the 19th. The one-armed VC was there, and this other former VC was there, and then the villagers were all standing around, and there was myself and a couple of my buddies were on the little stage there, and I was the master of ceremonies. And one of our guys was a Christian pastor, and he gave the invocation, and then he spoke about healing and brotherhood. And
so there's no animosity or anything?
No. So then after Doc Maybaugh spoke, then the one-armed VC stood up to speak, and he was in his own language, and it was interpreted. He was basically sending the same message that our Christian pastor was saying. And then after he was done, we had one of our guys was a Native American Indian, a Paiute, Dalton Tom out of Las Vegas. He did a performance called The Crying of Taps that he performs at all of these kind of events, and it was so Native American. I mean, he didn't have feathers all over the place, but he had Native American.
Tom is a big Paiute family name.
Yeah, and here this guy is kind of crying, whining, doing this thing of taps, down on his knee, and just shaking his shakers and feathers and things, and the Vietnamese people were just like, what?
Really?
Never seen anything like that, And then we had a Buddhist incense burning ritual, and afterwards I wrote a veterans page for this thing, and it's like you got Christianity, Buddhism, and Native American spiritualities all crammed together in one ceremony. It was magnificent.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So, yeah, I'm telling you, Leon, I am a blessed man for the things that have been happening to me in the last, my whole life, but especially in the last several years since being associated to the Signal to interview veterans, being affiliated now with the Greatest Generations and able to help recruit guys to go to Vietnam and visit their war zones. I was there in February with a group of 9 Marine Corps war journalists, and we went through Hue, and this Captain Dale Dye talked us through that battle and what happened to him and his buddies during the Tet Offensive of '68. To be at Khe Sanh, Hamburger Hill.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
What if they had told you, 40 years ago that you would be going back there, or 50 years ago now that you were going back?
I would have never, ever dreamed it, and to think I'm going to be back there on Veterans Day this year is
with
amazing.
The President of the United States.
With the President. It's a goodwill, it's part of a goodwill mission that's occurring, and to be part of that is, I just can't believe it.
Gotta let you go. What time on November 8th out there in Newhall, Veterans Plaza?
November 8th, 10 a.m. We've got a fabulous ceremony set up with Alicia Humphreys and Steve Dole performing some songs, very patriotic songs, taps, 21 gun salute, reading of the names by our veterans, and the unveiling of the actual monument by Gold Star families.
Good.
So it's going to be wonderful.
Looking forward to it. We'll see you out there.
All right.
Bill Reynolds, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us. Missed any portion of this program, you can see it again and again on scvtv.com. Check back here, Spectrum Channel 20, AT&T UVerse 99, for another Newsmaker of the Week.